Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Introducing ourselves by the first and last names of the nation. If anyone wants to add anything during the process, great. It doesn't have to be a quick run through. I'm Peter.
My name is Chuck Still, first time here.
My name is Andre.
Roger.
I am Manuel. My name is Michael.
I'm George.
Eric.
My name is Roy.
My name is Michael.
My name is Gary Dapper.
Paul Shepard.
My name is Oswaldo.
I'm Shantanu Pukan. I'm John.
My name is Jerry Jones.
Jerry.
My name is Richard.
I'm Lee Robbins.
John, my name is Michael.
My name is Cass Brayton.
No, I'm Ed.
My name is Tage.
Peter.
My name is Brian.
I'm Tom Bruein.
I'm Jim Stewart.
I'm Conrad.
I'm Joe.
And
And is there anybody else here for the first time other than our visitor? No? Okay. So our format will be that we'll have our speaker until about 11:45, and then we'll do announcements, then we break and have social half hour out in the lobby with refreshments, and hopefully people introduce themselves to you. And then at 12:30, a group of people will meet at the door for lunch if anybody wants to go. So our speaker today is Dr. Larry Peiperl, and he's an associate clinical professor of medicine at UCSF and has been practicing internal medicine at safety net clinics in San Francisco and New York City for 15 years. He's worked on clinical trials in HIV prevention and treatment, and he's been studying Soto Zen with Mayo Dennis Lahi at SNG, the Hartford Street Zen Center, since 2003. He's a medical consultant at Valley Health Services in the Tenderloin, and he received the bodhisattva precepts in 2005. Now, here's Larry.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thanks to Baruch and to Jerry for inviting me. It's a real honor to be here in this wonderful space with you. I think about the name Gay Buddhist Fellowship. I thought, well, you've sort of done the same thing twice, because really coming out of gay is really making a commitment to trust what's in our hearts and what's in our bodies, independently of what we're supposed to think or feel. And I think practicing Buddhism is just a more general expression. We vow to trust in the reality of our lives over any expectation of what we think our lives are supposed to be. So I think there's a common theme. And I was asked to speak about aging, a topic about which, of course, I know nothing. And you have had experts on aging speak to you already. And I think that we're all experts on aging. There's this game we play in doing talks where someone is supposed to be conveying something to you that you don't have already. And I don't actually see the point of talks like that, because I don't see how somebody can tell you more than you already know about the profound and intimate meaning of your own life. But we do have it as a ritual, and I just want to point out that my understanding of that ritual is that we support each other. It's not that I have something that you don't that I'm going to give to you. So aging is I think very good at really holding us to understanding the profound and intimate meaning of our own lives. I think that we live at an intersection. We live where our own individual separateness from the world runs into the complete interconnectedness of everything that is. And I think, like many people, I approached the study of Buddhism at first from the idea that I was limited by this sense of an individual self, and that as I practiced and studied and presumably became enlightened, I would somehow understand and fully participate in the oneness of everything that is. I'm not sure that's actually how it works. I think that what we see is that both are going on at once. There's this constructed bridge of the individual self that we need to get around in the world. And then there's that river of rivers that's flowing underneath it. And where we practice is the space, if you will, between the bridge and the river. That's where compassion really has an opportunity to operate. And so we can see aging from the side of our own separate lives, which are real, like the bridge. And we usually do that. So I'm getting this pain in my shoulder, and I think it might be bursitis, and it's getting worse, and I might have to go to the doctor, and I might not be able to bench press as much, and then I'll be less desirable. I mean, we can think of aging that way, right? Or we can think of aging under the aspect of the eternal, which poets like to do. For example, Dylan Thomas. And you, my father, they are on that sad height. Curse bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And I think it's part of our condition as human beings that it's very difficult to see aging or really anything else from both sides at once. When we focus on the eternal, then the individual sort of blurs. And when we turn to the individual, then the eternal tends to fade into the background. But both are always present together in our lives. My Zen teacher, one time, he said it this way. He said, no matter how enlightened you become, you are never going to go beyond this body and mind right now. What is this body and mind right now? Well, that seems like a confusing question. Of course, there are people who have come up with some very skillful methods of reminding us of what we already understand. For example, one of the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha about this body and mind right now is called the 3 marks of existence, which many of you have surely heard. And they are, all conditioned things are dukkha, right? They're suffering, they're unsatisfactory. Everything in the world is a gift, but like most gifts, it's probably not exactly what you would have chosen for yourself, right? So there's that mark of existence. The second, all conditioned things are anicca, right? They're impermanent. They're constantly changing. They're transient. And the third mark of reality pertains not only to all conditioned things, but a much more general term, all dharmas. So everything in the world, everything in the mind, everything, the 5 skandhas, and anything that the mind can conceive of is without independent existence, is empty. So 3 marks of reality: the unsatisfactory nature of reality, the transient nature of reality, and the emptiness, if you will, the absence of a separate self in existence. So for dukkha, of course, aging is a very good reminder. Things are just not the way they should be. They're not the way they used to be. I was in my mid-30s, and I was living in New York City, and I belonged to a gym, and my membership expired, and I thought, well, I'm teaching at NYU, I'll just use the NYU gym. And so I went to the NYU gym, and I had been, several years with us guys in mid-30s trying to maintain something that looked like youth. And you get in there with these 19-year-old athletes, and you say, oh, there's a difference between my idea of youth and the reality of youth as it actualizes in a gym or anywhere else. And that was sort of unsatisfactory, So it felt unsatisfactory. So you get into the bargaining, all right? They say, okay, well, at that time there was not. I guess I shouldn't be mentioning drug brand names in a talk as a physician, right? We'll get into trouble. But, there was something you could rub on your head that was maybe make your hair grow, I thought, I don't really want to do that. And then a pill came out that really made your hair grow. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. But I could do that. It's comforting to know that I could do that. And then, taking my glasses off to read and putting them back on again, taking them off and losing them. It's like, I'm not losing my memory. I'm simply losing my glasses because I have to constantly take them off to read again. Well, now they have something better than bifocals, right? They have these, what do you call it? Progressives, right? The progressive lenses, where they don't look like bifocals. And it says, okay, great, now I can read again. And I put it off. Or the pain in my teeth, around the gum line. I thought, this is really awful. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in pain. Around the gum line. Well, no, there is a product, and there is even a generic version of the product you can get for much less. So all these things you can do to deal with the unsatisfactory nature of life. But it's ultimately palliative care. It's what a hospice is for, right? It's just not changing the reality that our bodies are changing. But I would like to suggest that as we do have to pay more attention to ourselves and take care of ourselves as our bodies change with age, we don't have to fall into this preoccupation with ourselves. We can appreciate how the efforts of others, people we've never met but who make cheap generic analgesic toothpaste, are really acting in compassion to support us in our lives. They're actually helping us. Now, for Nietzsche, the transient nature of things, that's aging is just perfect, right? I mean, we lose our friends, we lose our job, we lose our abilities, the buildings that we love disappear, we forget the names of flowers that we used to have. It's just everything's passing and changing and falling into the ground, but it's also emerging and it's rising up, pretty much out of nowhere. And as we get older, we really start to understand how that process of ongoing change operates in people's lives. And we can share that perspective to encourage people. And I would suggest particularly younger people who tend to get completely freaked out by an immediate difficulty. And we'll talk more about how people responded to that. But as Ellen DeGeneres said recently, things will get better, and you should be there to see it. And I think we do have that message that we can convey, particularly to younger gay people currently. So we don't just fall into this melancholy despair of, all this is happening to me. Now, what she probably didn't point out is that things don't get better because the self that you think is the center of the universe gets better at getting everything that it desires. That's not actually how it works. Of course, things get better because that self gradually figures out that it's not the center of the universe. But that's a life's work. And indeed, you should be there to see it. I mean, we get so caught up in what age means about ourselves. I mean, did it ever occur to you that your grandmother was less lovable because she was wrinkled or because her hair was white? I mean, we don't think of things that way. She wasn't diminished by her age from our point of view, because in our eyes as a grandchild, she was exactly as she was supposed to be. And in that sense, aging itself is not the problem. It's our clinging to the conception of ourselves as unchangingly useful that actually causes the suffering. And so I think that's important to notice. We also, I think, we get into trouble by assuming that we understand now exactly what our experience of aging is going to be. I remember being in college. I spent a summer in the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Cape Cod, and I was going down a sort of an isolated beach near Woods Hole. And there was a couple, probably in their 40s, they seemed ancient to me, and they were talking about how they were going to plan their suicides, and who was going to know where the medicine was, and who's going to take it, and where the will was going to be. And this was all contingent of someday in the future they would both be, so decrepit and so unhappy their lives would be better just to die. And that bothered me at the time. It just seemed somehow self-indulgent. I mean, how do you know now what it's going to be like when you get old? You don't know. You've seen other people. You have a sense of what it might be like. But to assume that you should just plan it to me seems a little bit somehow not open to what the possibilities might really be. It seemed like it was attaching to an idea of aging that might not really have been the experience. So things are not the way they should be, because the way we think they should be has nothing to do with what they are, because they're constantly changing. And I think if we have some trust in the nature of the world, we can take comfort in that. And what we dread is a very tight place may turn out to have a lot more space in it than we thought it would. But it's not just up to us to determine the location and the design and the decoration of that space. We really do have to be open to it. The idea of, walk right in and there you are. And you will have the competence to deal with the situation. So, dukkha and anicca, those are difficult and fairly obvious lessons, I think, from aging. But how about anatta, absence of a separate self? Well, in the practical sense, it's easier not to see yourself as separate when you actually need help. I mean, if I find myself thinking negative, disparaging thoughts about someone, it's useful to me to say, imagine that person can really help you. How does that change the way you think about that person? If it's someone who can actually be a great benefit to you in the world. And I think that the more that we do need help, and as we get older, we do require other people, it becomes very clear that we're not just living in isolation, separate from everybody, doing our own thing. And that is very much in accord, I think, with the third mark of reality of emptiness, absence of separate self. I had an interesting experience, to me anyway, in May. It was at my 25th college reunion. So I went back, and my college does a big reunions event. I mean, they consume enormous quantities of booze, and they have thousands of people to send on the campus, and they have a big parade. And this parade has been going on for more than 100 years, and it's set up in an interesting way. The 25th reunion class leads the parade, because I guess you're at the height of your, I don't know what, and then probably your donated capacity. And then the classes go in chronological order from the oldest graduating class, the class of whatever is left now, 1922 or something, all the way on through the graduating seniors. And the seniors come last. So if you're in the 25th reunion class, which I was, then you march first, and everybody is on the sidelines waiting to fall into their place in the parade, and they're all waving and cheering, and you're throwing candy, and you're just totally accepted into this flow of life. And as you get to the end, then you get to watch everybody else march through, who is in their respective years. And it's very interesting, because suddenly, the years don't belong to events at that moment; they belong to people. And as the years go by, the people are getting younger, right? I mean, the class of 2010, they're kids, and they're clapping for. I mean, and you can have the sense, okay, I came to a union, sure, I was bothered by how old everybody looked, or how old I looked, or how everything had changed on the campus, and the dukkha and the anicca, but the emptiness of it, the absence of a separate self, is quite wonderful. What does it really matter? Who's the old person and who's the young person? It's all going on all the time, and you're always part of it. So it's a wonderful spiritual ritual. When I was a senior, I'm like, I'm not going to that. It's just a bunch of drunken alumni. But now I sort of felt like I got it. So that's great, of course. It's a reminder that we live at the intersection of the individual and the eternal, the constant flow of that river, with our individual bridge. And so it made me think of what was happening just a little bit up the road at Rutgers, just a few months later. So what happened on September 22nd. And Tyler Clementi got up, and he saw that his roommate's notebook computer with the camera was sort of centered on his bed, and he didn't like that. He disconnected it, moved it aside, because it had happened before. And he went to orchestra rehearsal. He was 18 years old, right? They were playing Berlioz, Symphonie Fantastique. They were playing Beethoven, Triple Concerto. They rehearsed that. And he went to his Facebook page, and he left a little note that said, "Jumping off the GW bridge, sorry." And he went up to the GW bridge, and this, of course, is the bridge that connects New Jersey to the great city where the Stonewall riots happened now more than 40 years ago. And he jumped off that bridge. How long do you think it takes between the bridge and the river? Maybe 2 or 3 seconds. Well, I have sort of an irrational hope. My hope for Tyler is that he saw something. I think we all live in that space. We're all aging. We're all falling between the bridge of our individual lives and that river of rivers. And some of us have decades to deal with it, and some of us have a few seconds. And I think that Tyler must have known that in that moment of falling, when there was no one who could do anything to help him, and there was no one who could hurt him anymore, that he might have seen something. And my hope for him is that in that urgently short time, he might have noticed the brilliant light that shines through our lives right as we're falling. And I'm very sorry that we didn't show it to him just a little bit earlier. So I was sort of caught up in the oneness of all beings around that. I was on the phone with my mother, who is 72, and she was complaining a little bit because now my father has to turn sideways to get out of the car because his back hurts. And I said, well, you've seen these stories. And she said, oh, yeah, it was on all the papers. It was terrible. I said, well, that's somebody who's not going to get old. So aging is not the problem. And my mother said, oh, no, Larry, if you get there, it's very painful. So she was right, and I was right, because that's how we live our lives, between the reality of the individual and the reality of the oneness, and that's where we practice. So, there are implications of how we deal with that reality. If I think primarily about how to hold on to some idea of youth myself, rather than how to support youth as it actually is, then I might become sort of nervous around young people. I might become too ashamed and too confused around people who are actually young to engage helpfully in their difficulties. I think if our self-image becomes one of sort of decrepit, undesirable body with nothing to look forward to, then how can we expect to have anything but awkward and discouraging interactions with young people? And how we ever help them to see that the difficulties of their lives are not unchanging and are not theirs alone to bear. So when we try to live in denial of the three marks of reality, to live as if we can be free of suffering, as if we can be permanent, as if we can be individually separate, then the self-deception, the delusion that results, I think, makes it very difficult to help other people. But fortunately, people are in fact engaging in a very constructive way. And I went online last night and looked at Dan Savage's It Gets Better project. And you can look at this at www.itgetsbetter.com. Within a week, there are hundreds of videos up there of people telling their stories right there of how they managed to negotiate these difficult situations as teenagers, as people who were bullied, right at the intersection of their individual lives and the universal love. And the videos are just alive with that. And of course, it doesn't make any difference whether these people think of themselves as, bodhisattvas or Buddhas or Buddhists or great enlightening beings or practitioners or spiritual teachers or whatever. They are there making that compassionate effort. And I was very impressed with that, and I recommend it if you want to see it. So I thought I might, since we have a little time before questions, share a poem by the great American mid-20th century poet Wallace Stevens, which I just came across the other day, and I thought, well, it's actually very nice. It's not only about the Buddhism and meditation, but it's also about dealing with the reality of being a bullied creature that sees yourself as weaker, as maybe some of these kids must feel. And it's called A Rabbit as King of the Ghosts. The difficulty to think at the end of day, when the shapeless shadow covers the sun, and nothing is left except light on your fur. There was the cat, slopping its milk all day. Fat cat, red tongue, green mind, white milk. And August the most peaceful month. To be in the grass, in the peacefulest time, without that monument of cat. The cat forgotten in the moon. and to feel that the light is a rabbit light, in which everything is meant for you and nothing need be explained, then there is nothing to think of. It comes of itself. And east rushes west, and west rushes down, no matter. The grass is full, and full of yourself. The trees around are for you. The whole of the wideness of night is for you. A self that touches all edges. You become a self that fills the four corners of night. The red cat hides away in the fur light, and there you are, humped high, humped up. You are humped higher and higher, black as stone. You sit with your head like a carving in space, and the little green cat is a bug in the grass. Thank you very much. Should we take questions?
Sure.
Discussion? Or I could read another poem. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I went through the period where I felt alienated from younger people. And I guess not even thinking about it, I've let that go, and I find that there's a lot of people who want to engage with you. I mean, most people like engagement, you know, and I don't remember now, you know, talking to a younger person and being shunned because of my age. And I also didn't like it when people started calling me sir. And now I'm just grateful that people have that respect for older people. So, you know, it's a glass half full thing, you know, you really have to, for me it's really become okay. And has its dukkha, but it certainly has its benefits. I actually feel more love now than I did. And it's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think part of what happens is when we're younger, we tend to partition sort of the energies into, okay, this is love, you know, this is sexual desire, this is work. And I think as we get older, it's not so clear that one energy is just one kind or the other kind of energy, is it? I think, you know, you feel it as love, more generally. Yeah. Yes?
When you were talking about your class reunion, this sort of reminded me of something that I've become aware of in the last several years, and that is, I go back for my high school class reunions. I grew up in the Midwest, and I go back every 5 years. They're a lot of fun. I had a really great group of people that I grew up with. And what's, of course, going back only every 5 years, you see how people are aging. You see who lost their hair, you see who got quite large, et cetera, et cetera. And now I feel that when I meet young people, I can now sort of take in some of the physical characteristics, and I can see what that person is going to look like. You know, the person who's just starting to lose his hair, and I can kind of flash forward and imagine what that person is going to look like when he's my age, in a way that he probably can't. And that, for some reason, that makes me feel very one with the younger person again. You know, it's there. As you get older, you carry everything that you went through, and it just, I've gone in a fairly short period of time from being a little bit annoyed with young people and their narrowness to really having a sense of compassion, because they are on the same path.
Yeah.
Whether they realize it or not, and that makes it easier to feel that connection.
Yeah, we
Interestingly, that it's based on observation of physical change.
Right. Thanks. Yeah.
Comment on two sides of listening. One side of it is that my parents have passed away a while ago now, and as I'm aging and discovering more physical difficulties and so forth, I'm more aware of not being perhaps sufficiently aware and compassionate. You know, my mother had a back operation, and I didn't think anything of it. I was across the country. And on the other side, sort of the flip side, it would have been helpful to me as a younger person, I think, to have been told more about what happens as you get older, so it wouldn't suddenly pop up as a big surprise.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that, and it all fits together in listening and talking, is that it's just come up with my partner, who's considerably younger. I've been aware, I've been doing too much, you should, and this won't work well, and so forth. So if you want to have relationships of any sort with younger people or with older people on either side, it requires some mutual respect.
Yeah.
So not like, you're 19, you don't know anything, and I'll show you the way. That may work for a little while, but don't be surprised when it falls apart.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. And I think that mutual respect, of course, requires contact. And I think we're not so good at that in our society. I mean, my parents are aging in the suburbs. There's no place to walk around. There's no place to encounter people. So it would be better to age in a big city, but then you have to worry about, is it safe to go for a walk after dark? Because, I mean, it's, and whereas, I was visiting a town in Italy once, and, in the evening, it was called the passeggiata, everyone just, comes out and walks around. You have older people talking to younger people. People are much more engaged. And I think here we have this, we think that there's a reality to the compartmentalization by age because we sort of enforce it in our cultural institutions. And that, to me, is a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the way you opened your talk, saying something about the gay Buddhist fellowship, and you said something about coming out as gay was like practicing the Buddhist attitude. Could you repeat that?
I think what I meant was that, when you come out, you are committing to recognizing the reality in your body. The universe has shown you something in your own body that you then have to take to your life. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. And I think in Buddhism, in life we are all pretending, to have faith or have faith in things that we pretend to exist, that in fact have as their nature suffering, transience and absence of separate self. And so Buddhism is sort of a more generalized commitment to focus on what really is there before us and not what we think life should be. And what we should be. Yes?
So similar to what Lee was talking about, I can recall that when I was in high school, I looked back at my younger sister and her friends and thought how silly and uninformed they were. And then when I was in college, I thought how immature all the kids in high school were. And when I was out in the workday world, I thought how, crazy and drunk the kids in college were. But now that I get towards middle age, it makes me wonder if, I'm starting to realize that instead of looking backwards at other people coming up behind me, how much value there is in looking at people who are ahead of me 10, 20 years, and just sort of switching that orientation. Maybe not abandoning the other, but just sort of realizing that there's value on either side of the spectrum.
Yeah, definitely. Because of course, your view of someone 10 years behind you. Well, if someone 10 years ahead of you we're looking at you with that view, you think it's sort of strange, right? But somehow that again is something in human nature. It's always we're sort of right in the center of everything that's going on, right? Yeah.
The universe.
The universe.
We're not.
We are, but so is everybody else. So.
I was interested in your story about. Well, thank you for your talk. Has been wonderful. About overhearing 40-year-olds talking about how they would end their lives when the time came, and I find this increasingly is a topic among my peers, but also among the old people I know. I have an eloquent aunt who was in a lot of pain and quite deaf, and is 92, and says, Jimmy, there should be a stepping off point. When your life is complete, you're ready to go, you should be able to get some help. rather than just be a victim of the momentum of the machine until it peters out. And I think a lot of us during the AIDS nightmare had experience of assisting friends die. And so I have lots of straight friends who say, you know how to do this. I'm hiring you. I've got a list of about 50 people who are relying on me to terminate them when they're unfeasible. Yeah. Which is this peculiar phenomenon that's happened, but they think I've seen more about this than I have. Yeah. I think a lot of us have. And I just think it's an interesting conversation that's heightening now when people see our society's denial and discomfort and artlessness in dealing with end-stage stuff, that this conversation is going to get more vivid. Anyway, I just throw that out there. This seems to be happening.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, it's a huge issue, and it's a huge complicated issue. And I don't mean that people should be, obligated to hang on when their lives are nothing but pain, and there's no possibility for anything else. But I think to plan that out 30 years in advance and think, it's going to be right. I was at a demonstration at the Asian Art Museum. A Japanese, Rinzai, Roshi doing this wonderful calligraphy, and then they hung up all the scrolls and were selling them to raise money. He wants to, at age 70, he wants to come to the United States. He's already got a group up in an island in Washington State. And he says he wants to come and to teach people how to die in America. He says, because in American society, you think that when it's time for you to die, then you're of no use to anybody. You're left over and you just have to, you're a burden and you just need to go. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I wonder, a lot of these suicides, how would it be if there actually were a caring, supportive environment, something like a family around and something like, support and comforting. At some point, of course, everyone has to go, but I think, as you say, it could be a lot better than it is. Yes.
One aspect that a lot of people, I'm 63, a lot of people, plus or minus 10 years or whatever, of my generation went through, of course, was the AIDS years when things were at their worst. And I think, certainly in my case, it gave me a lot more opportunity to be compassionate, because I had to, lost a partner to that, and lost many friends. And one of the challenges that I think that we have as a generation of gay men, is to communicate some of what we went through to people that are 40 or under, that through their good luck, they're not experiencing that. They're, of course, missing some opportunity for compassion there, but it really is a challenge, conveying that what we learned to people of the new generation. And it does get, relating to your topic before, it does get better. And even through the experiences we had, it was a wonderful experience for growth.
Yes, yeah. It was absolutely alive,
Just a related research question just occurred to me around that. So one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that the population of gay Buddhist groups is relatively old. There aren't very many young people there, and I assumed that was because Buddhism became more attractive when you became older and more spiritual and so forth. But it just occurs to me to wonder if it's different for straight Buddhist groups, which didn't go through the HIV epidemic. So I wonder if the nature of us, and indeed our very existence, is a result of as a gay Buddhist group, is a result of HIV.
Yeah, I wonder that too. I mean, people who are, younger than about 45 are not going to remember the civil rights movement, not going to remember the Vietnam War protests. I mean, there was a lot that happened, I think, in that period that might lead one later in life to think, Buddhism is really interesting. And the HIV epidemic was, so I moved to San Francisco right after college in 1985, where, half the town was, Castro anyway was positive, and pretty much anyone who was positive could expect, to live for, a couple of years. And it was, it was so difficult, and it was so intense and so real. I mean, there was almost never a doubt about what was the right thing to do, because there was such obvious need and so much that needed to be done. And it's very difficult, I think, to convey that. It's not something to have nostalgia for, because it was terrible, but in the reality of a terrible situation, compassion does function, and it's good to have the opportunity to notice that. You know. Yes?
Yeah, one thing that I'm picking up on that idea, I think right now is such an interesting time to be living, especially for people, because we are in the middle of our civil rights moment, and we are fighting, and picking up on what you said about it gets better. Many of you may have seen the city councilman from Fort Worth, Texas, Joel Burns, who did this. It was like a Dharma talk, a 12-minute talk when he introduced himself at the city council meeting. He's a member of the city council. And he showed the recent suicides, and he talked about what they felt like. And he also talked about when he was 13 and he thought about killing himself. And it was, he decided not to do it. And it's pretty much, it was the love of his family that kept him from doing this. And I think, and it's just a powerful thing. It's got lots of press. But I think what's happening in society right now is straight people are waking up to the fact that gay people are in pain. And they're killing themselves, and they can't serve in the military, and they're not asking for special rights, but they're actually want to be like everyone else. And I think one of the powerful things right now for older gay men too is that if you go to this It Gets Better project, there's older gay men on these videos talking to their 13-year-old self, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It makes me one of the things I actually like it, even though we're using social media, I wish it could be one-on-one, is the opportunity for older gay men to interact with younger gay men in a way that everyone feels safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's so much richness there. Wisdom meets, effervescence. And so, but I do think this is one of the things I keep on reminding myself is this is an amazing moment to be. I feel like my ancestors, my gay ancestors, have been fighting for this moment for thousands of years.
Yes.
Kind of connected to what you were saying about how difficult it is to see, for the young to see the old's view of aging and dying, and the vice versa. My mother's 86, and she looks much younger, but she pretty much complains every time I talk to her on the phone about things that are, some of them are out in her head, and a couple of them are real, like high blood pressure and stuff. But she's not bedridden. She can get outside. She simply doesn't. And I actually have a patient at UCSF, and I have a pretty rare and aggressive condition, and I'm waiting for a bone marrow transplant. But I often think, and I've said to her a couple times, I'll be grateful to make it to 70 and be complaining about my sore back and my bad legs, or
right.
I don't know how it feels to be that age, but I'm actually not afraid of getting that old. I'm afraid of the opposite of dying younger, and I've tried to tell her in a sort of diplomatic way, some of us would be grateful to make it to 86 or even a fraction of that.
Yeah.
So there's that part too.
Absolutely. No,
I would be grateful to be 70 or 75, and my main problems being, my bowels or my back or something.
Right.
And I know doesn't feel comfortable when you're the one that has it.
Right. Yeah.
That's my perspective.
But you remember that, and you have that perspective.
At least you made it that far, and you had that much experience in life.
And you'll have that. Yeah, it's true. I think it's often the case with people, of course, is that they don't actually want to hear the truth. They want to be comforted, and that's okay, right? And so maybe that's maybe your grandmother's like my mother was like, the father's like, yeah, I know, you're right, it's terrible that he had to, the 18-year-old is dying, but couldn't you show a little Rahmanis, right, for what we're going through right now? And would it have cost me so much to say, oh, that's hard, that's really terrible, I'm so sorry you're going through that. I will be there for you, It didn't occur to me at the time to say it, but that probably would have been the right answer, But, because I think that, that's right. But sometimes people are a little too self-indulgent, and then it's appropriate to say, what I'm handling right now is actually enough for me, and I appreciate you're having that difficulty, and you might consider what we're both going through. That can also be appropriate. It really depends on the moment, and I think we need to trust our hearts in those interactions. You have your whole life experience of you know your grandmother very well. Your mother, yeah.
So I think we're sort of out of time. It's been a wonderful discussion and talk. Thank you. And will you be available after to talk to individuals as we socialize?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. If they'll be available to me. Yeah.
Great. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any announcements?
Hi. Larry, again, thanks for coming today. That was great.
Thank you.
And next week, Rebecca Dixon will be here, who is a lesbian Vipassana teacher over at East Bay Meditation.
Tonight is, finally the night is here. It's Bill Weber and David Weissman's We Were Here filming at the Meyer Sound Laboratories, and it's a special screening of this documentary about people that are recounting their stories, both men and women who lived through the years of the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco. The film is going to be screened at the Meyer Sound Laboratories in Berkeley at 7 p.m. I've been registering people for the past few weeks. There's still a couple of seats left, so if you'd like, let me know today during the social hour, and I'll go ahead and put your name down on the list. It should be a really wonderful film. The film is free, and it's a special screening just for the GDF.
I'm registered to go, and I'm wondering if anybody might be carpooling over and wanting to share a ride. I live in Market Castro, so see me if that's possible.
I'd like to thank George Hubbard for arranging for this filming at the Meyer Sound Laboratory, and Roy for being our registrar.
Do you have a host today, or? So we meet afterwards for social half hour and have tea set up or not. But if we do and you have some tea, please wash your cup. And then again, people will go out to lunch at 12:30. Set with the usual announcement is Donna, thank you. Yes, and I'll walk around with the Donna Bowl, and we ask for a suggested donation between $5 and $8, but whatever anybody has is great. And
Sign up list.
okay. Yes, we have a newsletter and a sign up list out there next to the Donna Bowl. If you want to get on the GBF list, it's there. Alrighty. Larry, will you lead us in a dedication of merit?
Oh, sure. Let's see. I have to hold this in my mouth. Okay. Thank you. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, and live believing in the equality of all that live.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.